So I just wanted to do a quick non-scientific experiment and I guess to show you guys a little bit different grades of oil, different brands. And we'll start here with just flipping them over, shaking them, and telling you what they are. It was -10 last night. It's about 10 degrees right now. It's noontime. I figure this is kind of a realistic time. Most people aren't blowing snow in -10 degrees or plowing. They're starting their equipment up. I'd say most people are working snow 15 to 30 degrees on average, but obviously some places it's much lower. But I'd say the average people working snow is 15 to 30 degrees. So these are -10 last night. Right now, about 10-12 degrees Fahrenheit plus right now. We just uncovered them, so the sun hasn't had much use on them. This is 2050 Scheaffers racing oil. So pretty thick still, but definitely flows. Again, -10 last night, and we're about 10-12 degrees right now. I would not be afraid to use 2050 in 10-degree weather. And that's what I tell everybody. There's a lot of people that will argue, and we'll get into that a little bit more. This is Rotella 1540. Definitely a little faster for sure, but I wouldn't say night and day difference. Still gonna pump no problem, just like the 2050 would. This is Delvac 1540. Might be a hair slower. Hopefully you're picking that up. This is Scheaffers 1540 Racing. We didn't have any Scheaffers diesel oil, but I'm sure it would flow very similar. I would say that's probably a little quicker than both of them. And we'll go into why we use racing and diesel oil and what we use it on. And this is Scheaffers 540. You'll notice a huge difference. Barely affects it. That oil is going to pour like that out of the bottle pretty close at 50 degrees or 60 degrees or whatever. Very slight difference, I almost guarantee you. Next we'll do a little experiment on a non-scientific rig, but this is real world reality, and we'll do that next. Again, not scientific, obviously. We're working in single digits, low temperatures, so it's not fancy, it's not pretty. I don't want to hear all the scientists lose their crap. This is for visual purposes to give you an idea. In real life tests, and I haven't seen a bunch of different diesel oils with racing oils and stuff side by side with different grades. So this is what we're going to do. These are spaced apart. They're all got the same amount of oil in them. They're all taped up the same distance from the bottom. It's as scientific as going to get in 10-degree weather. This one here is 2050 Scheaffers. The Rotella is the next one. The next one is the Delvac 1540. Then the 540 Scheaffers Racing. And the very last one is, 1540 Scheaffers Racing. The very last one is 540 Scheaffers Diesel Oil. So again, it's probably 10-12 degrees out. The 2050 flows, they flow through your engine. People scream about, oh, below 30 degrees you can't use it. It's BS. There's people that run in North Country and use it all year long. The Scheaffers is a far superior product to any of these other oils, but that's not what this is about. A lot of additives in here, but it's expensive, so you get what you pay for sure. I know you can't see, but the Scheaffers is just hitting the bottom now. So here's a different angle of what we were just watching. A side view, so you can see the different angle, and this thing's probably 30-40 degree angle that it's getting tilted on. But I want you to notice kind of how the oil flows out, how it hits the piece of metal, and then what each one kind of does when it does hit it. And I kind of pay attention to which ones kind of come out first, and then what happens. There is a little difference, and I was kind of surprised. You watch the first one and you don't quite pick up on it, but I'll do a slow motion in a little bit. But again, the one furthest from us is a 2050. The next one's a Rotella 1540, Delvac 1540, Scheaffers 1540 Racing, and Scheaffers 540 Diesel. Of course, the 540 is just blowing the other ones away, which is expected. And the 2050's flowing pretty good, but it's obviously slower than the rest. Last night was -10, and it's about 10 degrees out, 12 degrees, depending on which thermometer we're looking at. So remember, this oil is not 10 degrees just because it's 10 degrees out. It's got to bring itself up from the -10. So the 1540s were all pretty close. The Scheaffers looks like it was a little bit behind here. The synthetic blend Delvac and the Rotella conventional were pretty neck and neck. And this is just strictly flow. We'll talk about a few other things in a little bit. You can see kind of how they're dribbling out of the bottles now, and the 2050 is a pretty solid strand. The 540 was kind of a drip in between, and the other ones are kind of dripping in between. So here's a slow motion. I want you guys to kind of pay attention as how they're actually pouring out of the bottle and which ones kind of come out first. Now these are actually put on pretty level, pretty even. Yes, not scientific, but the pour characteristics might be slightly different than the flow characteristics. And you'll remember which one I kind of thought was second fastest when we were dumping them over by the grill when they were still in the bottles. The flow down the sheet didn't show the same thing, but this kind of does. And there's probably a few different reasons for it, and I'd like to hear your opinion, and I'll give you my theory a little bit. But yeah, they're at an angle here, but when they hit the metal, they're pretty even, and see which ones come out first. So the pour characteristics aren't all that far off. And the 540 on the left is obviously the fastest. The 2050 on the right is obviously the slowest. And the three in the middle are pretty close, but it looks like the Rotella's flowing a little faster and poured a little faster than the Delvac than the Scheaffers 1540. But if you noticed when this was being poured, the 540 hit first, then the 1540 Scheaffers, that's second from the right, hit next. Even though that's the slowest right now out of the 1540, it poured the fastest. When we were cleaning these up and even working with these, we know the difference. All three of the Scheaffers are far slicker, far smoother, but they're also stickier and tackier, if that makes sense. And I think what's happening with this 1540 Scheaffers, why it's falling behind a little bit, is it's actually getting itself caught on the metal and impregnating instead of slipping all the way over it. It's actually tacking to the metal, and that's what's actually slowing down the flow of it a little bit. So I think it'd pump absolutely the same as the other ones, if not better. And I think it'd pump absolutely wonderful, to be honest with you. But I think because it's stickier, tackier, it's made to stick to the metal parts better. That's why it's actually slowing down a little bit on the vertical flow here, or semi-vertical flow. I don't think it's a viscosity thing or anything like that. So it's just kind of something interesting to note. And when I played the video back and when I was shaking them or flipping them over, I could feel this one being faster out of the other two 1540s. So there's a lot of cool things about Scheaffers oil. We'll get into that a little bit, but I just wanted to play this in slow motion and show you a little bit. Why we chose these oils these are the ones we use the most around here, depending on the equipment. But yeah, the small engines, we always go with a racing oil or a diesel oil and prefer synthetics. Small engines are extreme environment. People don't think about or realize it, but that engine runs extremely hot. The temperatures fluctuate greatly of what that engine runs because it's air cooled. It's under a lot of stress. It's a little engine, little parts, but they're still turning fairly high RPMs. They're still putting out power. They're still working hard. They get dust and dirt all over them. They don't breathe and cool very well. The other thing to note with small engines is the oil capacity is usually very small. You're talking a couple of quarts on most of them. So it gets contaminated and gets hot very quick, and often they get neglected and not changed as frequent as they should. The small engines really have it rough. So the small engine is probably one of the harshest environments. The other harsh environments out there are obviously racing engines are extreme harsh environments, and diesel engines are working in extreme harsh environments. And all three of these are usually running at higher temperatures, higher combustion temperatures. And so the racing oil and the diesel oil do really well with the small engines. Another huge reason, especially is why we're using the Scheaffers racing oil, but a lot of the other ones do have it to a point, is Scheaffers adds a ton of zinc, and zinc is great for flat tappet engines and for metal to metal contact. So zinc works great for pumps, for gear pumps, for any cams and tappets and metal to metal contacts. So the zinc is a huge benefit. Scheaffers also puts quite a bit of moly into their oil, which is a big thing. And the other thing they use is that they came up with, which is what they call a penetro, And it's pretty cool. You look into it, and we've seen it with our rep that came in. It's basically makes the particles or the molecule penetrate the surface of the metal, and they build a film over time that actually stays on the metal and helps with the friction reducing and whatnot and wear and tear. It makes a big difference. And so that's a huge additive, and especially with metal to metal contact and gear contact and whatnot. There's a lot of other benefits. This isn't here to push Scheaffers. We're not sponsored by any of these oil companies, just telling you what we like, what we prefer, and why we do it. That's kind of that in a nutshell. The 1540 diesel oil engine we also use on all our diesel trucks and tractors here, and the racing oil goes in all the gas ones. I've used 2050 since I was a kid, running big block Chevy engines and trucks and stuff right through the winter in the Northeast. Never had an issue. The biggest key with any of these heavier weight oils in the wintertime, and this specifically go with our case Ingersoll tractors that use them in the hydraulic system also, but anything you're using, is if you're going to be running it the next day in the cold, just start your truck up or your car up or your tractor up and let it run for 10 minutes the night before. Get that oil up, splashed around that engine, and it'll coat the engine and it'll stick there, it'll stay there. I mean, look at that 2050. You think that's falling off that engine in 3 seconds and then going back down to the sump? No, that's sticking all over the engine and staying there. And that's one advantage to the 2050 sometimes. If you got a machine that's sitting a long time, it takes a long time in the cool, especially for that 2050, to find its way all the way back down to the crankcase and off your parts. As to where some of the lighter engine oils, the 1030s and stuff, and the 520s, they drain right back and take a small, or take a lot of the film with them when they drain back, where this leaves a lot of the film in a heavier film and stays there longer. So just something to think about. But if you run your engine the night before, your parts are all freshly coated oil. You're not going to have a dryer start up in the morning, and it's just a good practice. And your engine's a little bit warmer, takes that much longer to cool down the metal and and whatnot. So if we know we're getting 10 degrees, 0 degrees, below zero, and we got to use something the next day, we always run everything the night before for just a little bit, just to get that oil splashed up, moved around, warmed up, the block warmed up, and that's what we do. The other thing is, especially these case Ingersoll tractors using this in the hydraulic system, but anything is let your machine warm up. Get that oil moving. It doesn't take a long time for that oil to get to a much faster flow and pump characteristic. So you let that machine warm up for 5 or 10 minutes, and the oil in the engine and the oil in the pump is moving much better. Let them warm up before you go work them hard, and you won't have blowing hoses and seals and all that kind of stuff either, and you'll do far less damage to the engine. It'll last a lot longer. So warm up is key. So some other things to touch upon is when people are talking about 2050 oil being too thick for the wintertime, or 1540 too thick for the wintertime. Yeah, it's far thicker, it flows less. Obviously, this little simple test shows that than the 540. But a couple things to think about. When I choose an oil, it's what temperature is that machine starting at, not what temperature in the weather it's running at, how cold I get in the wintertime. All that's irrelevant. But what is the coldest or average temperature that machine's going to start at? If you're kept in the garage, if you're kept somewhere else in a heated shop, or if you're kept outside, all that needs to be taken into consideration. And when you're out there plowing snow and stuff, is it really 5 degrees? Is it really negative 10 degrees? Or are you plowing most of the time when it's 20 or 30 degrees? And are you starting your machine inside? Then if you're starting it inside, I'd say run the thickest oil possible if your garage is somewhat heated and warmer than it is outside. If your machine's starting up in the dead of winter and you live where it's cold and you know you're going to be out there plowing in 0 degree weather for some chance, sure, run the thinner stuff. But when you're choosing your oil, think about what temperature it's starting at on average. Now that 2050, that'll start, you'd probably start that engine below zero, no problem. Negative 10 it would probably start. Would I advise it? Not what I want to do all the time. Once in a while, if you're in that temperature all the time, run the 540. That's what I would recommend. If you're going to be plowing snow and it's 20 degrees, 30 degrees, 15 degrees and above, you're absolutely fine with that 2050 when you're starting that machine. So just, it's personal preference. Keep that in mind. The other thing with the diesel oil, Rotella, we used for years. It's great oil. We use it in hydraulic systems on some of these case Ingersolls too, if the customers don't want the synthetic. Delvac, same thing, great oil. I'd say Delvac and Rotella are pretty comparable. Might prefer Rotella a little bit personally, but that's just a preference. The Scheaffers is, in our opinion, and it's proven, and we get oil samples back and test, it's a far better oil It is much more expensive. But I will say we did notice when we switched over on our Cummins diesels, on our Cats, that after about the first 10 seconds, for the first time switching over, those engines quieted right down. And I noticed it on the Onins when we put the Scheaffers oil in the Onins, the valve train quiets right down. And there's far less friction in there. You can have a Scheaffers rep come out and do a demonstration and show you a test. There's probably some stuff on YouTube. The products are superior. Their grease, everything, there really is. But you pay for it. So you get what you pay for, and depends what's in your budget. But when people say oil is oil, I'm not going to argue all day long, but it's not. Sure, there are minimum requirements that all oil meets to be in a class. And if you use one over the other, is your engine going to blow up as long as it's in the right class? No. But if you use the better one over the other one, is your engine going to last longer, perform better? I'd almost guarantee it. It's just a simple fact. When you see these things side by side, when you see engines torn down, when you see engines that go past their oil change interval, cheap oil does not, it hits its interval, it hits the minimum requirements. I would not run cheap oil longer than you have to by any means. Where some of these better oils, you absolutely can and get away with it. Not recommended, but you can get away with it. And you see this in the test results. We'll run engine oil and send a sample out, and it's supposed to be changed at 5,000 miles or 10,000 or 15, and we'll keep sending samples out, and they'll say you can go another 3,000, another 5,000. Well, the Scheaffers is the ones we see the most. We can go longer if we wanted to. We've just done it in a test. We like to change oil on the intervals, but we've done it, and we've seen a lot of people do it. So that's just something to keep in mind too. As far as your hydraulic system goes, I'd already run what you're running in your engine as into your hydraulic system on these case Ingersolls, because that's what they're designed to run off of, engine oil. So if you're running 540 in the engine, run it in the hydraulics. If you're running 2050 in the engine, run it in the hydraulics. It keeps things simple, and it's based on temperature. These tractors like the thicker oil, so the 40 weight oils and 50 weight oils do far better. I love 540 engine oil. We use it in a ton of stuff, and it's also a great choice. 1540 is a great oil. We use it in a lot of stuff, but I'm in the thought, if we've got a machine we know that's running in the cold all the time, starting in the cold, I run the 540. A lot of the other stuff, I prefer running the 2050. That's just personal preference. Really cool thing is we haven't tried it yet. It's a little pricey, more so, but Scheaffers has a 550 synthetic and I'm really excited to try that. And if they want to donate some for us to try, we'll be all ears about it. But I think for our case Ingersoll machines, that might be the ticket, is the 550, because that gives you a great winter pourable blend, and the 50 is great for the hard work in the summer and when these hydraulics heat up and these engines heat up. So kind of looking forward up to that. Again, all their great oils, we use them all. Delvac, Rotella, the Scheaffers. We're going to have some sheets in here and some of the Scheaffers stuff, just because it's not a lot of people know about it, but you can go to mobile for Delvac and Shell for Rotella and get all the tech sheets and information. And the Scheaffers website is schaefferoil.com. Hopefully this helped a few guys, and a little visual. It was a fun little video to put together, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of comments, and that's great. You know, everybody has their opinions and their experiences, and this is based off our experience, so we like to back our opinions with either fact or experience, and this is off our experiences and with some facts. And again, you know, oil is one of those debates. We find a difference, and we prefer what we prefer, and these are the oils we use and recommend. We appreciate you guys watching. We're going to be doing more videos like this, a lot of tool reviews coming up, so really appreciate you guys subscribing. New people watching, please subscribe. We got a lot of content coming out, and we're having fun doing this, and we'd appreciate the support. Thanks for watching.